When somebody is in the throes of like fresh grief, now is not the time to remind them that like, well, at least they're not on shitty earth anymore. Thanks for coming back. We are doing another 5 things kind of video. I like this format because I think it's really easy to digest and it makes my life really easy for filming, so we're gonna keep doing it. So you clicked on the video, you saw the title, you know what we're doing. We are talking about things to not say to somebody who's mourning or grieving. This I think is really important to talk about because our culture, especially in America, we're fundamentally very uncomfortable with death. You can see this too even in like the way that we talk about death. Like we rarely use the word death or die or dead because, I don't know, people just don't like it. Like we say like they've passed on, they passed away, no longer with us. They've gone to heaven. Like we say all kinds of weird things other than just acknowledging the fact that like she did, and like that's fine. And not that we should be treating death like it's a joke, but it's funny to me that we are so uncomfortable with it because it is a fact of life. It is something that happens to everybody and it will touch all of our lives in some way. You know, we will all lose a loved one that we care really deeply about at some point in our life, and so I think this is really important because in the same way that we will lose a loved one that we really care about, our friends and family and people that we're close with will lose loved ones that they really care about. And so learning how to show up for those people and actually support those people when they really need it is a really useful skill. So I wanted to talk about some of the ways that our culture has kind of taught people to treat death that are actually really not helpful. And kind of mean sometimes. So, as a quick disclaimer, if you do these things or you've said these things, please know that I'm not shaming you or like passing judgment. I have said and done some of these things, again, because our culture just encourages us to not talk about death in a matter-of-fact way. Please know that I'm not like passing judgment or, throwing shade or anything like that. This is all very normal and culturally accepted. And so I just wanted to pass this information along to you guys because, again, I think it's useful, and I think also having like some concrete strategies for how to deal with this can help alleviate some of the anxiety around like, I don't know how to respond, or like what the right thing to say or do is when someone that you care about has lost a loved one. Okay, so the first thing, never, ever, ever say they're in a better place now. And again, I know that this comes from a place of love and like trying to encourage somebody that their loved one, is no longer in pain, or they're not suffering anymore, which is nice, but it sends the implicit message that being here with you was less fun than where they're at now, which sucks, especially if you're talking to somebody who lost like their spouse, or their parent or their child, because basically what you're saying is like, aren't you so glad that they're not here anymore? And like, fucking no. Nobody is ever like excited when someone dies. Like, that's so sad. Again, I know that this comes from a good place, and like, especially for somebody who is religious, it's an attempt to say that like, oh, they're with God now or whatever. But it is still hurtful, and it, especially when somebody's grieving, when somebody is in the throes of like fresh grief, now is not the time to remind them that like, well, at least they're not on shitty earth anymore. Not the time or place. And also, if you have a very explicit understanding with this person that you guys are both religious, you both identify with the same religious belief, you're both on the same page with that, then sure, it might be helpful to share like a piece of scripture, a reminder from your church service, something that was, especially impactful or poignant to you when you lost a loved one. That can all be, very nice. But again, fresh grief, and especially when somebody has just lost a loved one, is not the fucking time to say, well, they're in a better place now. So just don't. Number 2 is probably the most common one that I've ever heard people say when someone loses a loved one is, I'm so sorry for your loss. Which again is nice, and it's like kind of a go-to phrase and whatever, but when you think about somebody who's just lost a loved one and they have to do like the whole rigmarole of like funeral services and obituaries and like a wake and all of that stuff, think about how many fucking times they have to hear somebody say, I'm so sorry for your loss. It is so frustrating, it's so annoying, and it also just feels like you're like really phoning it in terms of being a supportive person. There are about 150 different things that you could say to someone to express your condolences for their loss other than I'm sorry for your loss. And again, I'm not trying to like throw shade at anybody or like shame you for having said this. Again, I have said this. But I would encourage you, especially if there's somebody that you're close with, to find a different thing to say. Literally, even if all you're saying is, I don't know what to say. I don't have words. I'm so sorry. Like, I'm here for you. I can't even imagine, but I just want you to know that I'm here for you. Like, that's so much nicer than saying, I'm so sorry for your loss. It just feels brain dead. And again, think about how many times that person has to hear that phrase. And so even if you don't have like the perfect thing to say, which is another thing that I think we put pressure on ourselves to find the perfect thing to say and have like the thing to say that's going to fix it. But like, their loved one just died. You can't fix it. There's nothing that you could say to make that better. And so sometimes just offering your unconditional support or expressing love in a different way. Like, I'm Mexican, so we express love with food. And so like that is a way that you can express to somebody that like you care and you're here. Yeah, this phrase I think is just a really popular one. It shows up on like sympathy cards and stuff all the time. And I just would encourage you to express your care for that person in a different way that does not include those words. Number 3 kind of goes along with not knowing what the perfect thing to say is, which is a really common one. And also I have done this, but when somebody that you care about has lost a loved one and you don't know what to do, we just fucking don't say anything at all. We just ghost that person for a couple months. Don't talk about it. Don't text them. Don't call them. Don't post on Facebook about it. We just ignore them and like hope that they get over it soon. Again, I get where that's coming from. I'm not judging anybody, but like this is not an ideal response to especially someone that you're close with when they lose a loved one. And I think this is a perfect example of the byproduct of this weird cultural uncomfortableness with death, where we don't know what to say, we don't know how to deal with it. It's not something we talk about. And so when this happens, we're like, ooh, I don't know, I'm just gonna not text you, I'm gonna not call you, or I'll like, cry react to the post that you made on Facebook, and like that'll be the extent of it. And like I get where it's coming from, but again, you don't have to have the right answer. I think we are all probably understanding of the fact that like there's nothing that we can do to make them feel better. Grief is a thing that we have to move through. And so expressing love in whatever way you know how, even if that means sending a text saying like, I don't know what to say. I really don't. I just want you to know that I'm here for you. Like, I see you, and I want you to know I'm here for whatever you need. That is a really impactful and kind way to support someone. And actually, there's a creator that I follow on Instagram. Her name's Emily McDowell. She has this really amazing business where she has lots of like really cute stationery products and stuff like that. But she makes these things called empathy cards instead of sympathy cards. And they have sayings on them that kind of say things like that. Like, I don't have the right words. There's no right card for this. Just like really refreshing and like human ways to talk about grief and sadness. And so if you were like looking for a card to send, definitely look there, because there's lots of really cool, honest cards there to like send to somebody, especially if you don't have the words. That's a good way to do that. So yeah, try not to ghost your friends or family who just lost a loved one. Again, that's just like not an ideal way to deal with it. And there are lots of other ways that you can express your love and care for a person. In a way that's not that. Whew. All right, number 4 is probably my like biggest pet peeve. And this is one of those things that once you are aware that this is something that people say, you will hear it everywhere. So I am sorry. But anything with the words "at least" in front of it, just don't. Just don't. Because there is no "at least" for when somebody that you love deeply just fucking died. When your loved one is going through grief and is really struggling with the fact that somebody that they care about just died, they don't need you to silver lining their bullshit. They don't need you to offer a bright side to the fact that somebody they really care about is fucking dead, gone forever. Like, that sucks. So saying the words "at least," like, well, at least they didn't suffer. At least their family was around them when they died. At least that, they know they really cared. People really cared about them. Like, no, especially when you are, again, in like fresh, new grief. That is not the time. The thing that I think is probably almost universal, people really don't need you to offer an "at least" or a silver lining to the fact that they're really fucking sad. Because not only is this not helpful, but also it's kind of invalidating. Because especially when somebody dies, like, that's a really permanent loss. It's almost kind of invalidating to say like, oh, well, at least they didn't suffer. Like, okay, so, like, I still get to be sad. You still get to feel however you want to feel when somebody that you really cares about died. And so saying, like, well, at least XYZ, it makes people feel some type of way about expressing their grief to you publicly or openly and honestly, because the implicit understanding there is like, let's just focus on the positive. Let's look on the bright side. And like, somebody just died. Let's not look on the bright side. Let's just honor our feelings and be open and honest about the fact that, like, this fucking sucks. There's not a way to fix this, but it's just something that we have to move through. Okay, and then our last one is kind of along the same lines, but saying like, well, you'll feel better soon. It'll be okay. Don't worry. Because first of all, we don't know that. Someone might feel some type of way about the fact that their loved one died for like an extended period of time. That's totally a thing that happens, especially if it's a really personal loss, like a spouse or a child or a parent. And so not only, saying like you'll feel better soon puts like an implied timeline on somebody's grieving, but also you don't know that. And so don't say those things to people, because it's okay for us to not be okay about the fact that somebody died for however long that we want to not be okay for. And so again, saying this just kind of implies that we are not willing to hold space for somebody to honor their actual emotions. A lot of times it can make the person who's grieving feel unsafe expressing those emotions to you, because they feel like you're going to hit them with the, well, don't worry, everything's going to be fine. And like, that doesn't feel good, And so it can kind of clam up the communication there. Again, I'm not trying to say that I have the answer for the perfect thing to say when somebody's grieving, but I did want to encourage you guys that these, first of all, are not it. But second of all, don't be afraid to just tell somebody like, I don't know what to say, but please know that I'm here. I make wicked brownies, and so if you need me to drop them off at your doorstep, no questions asked, I am down for that. Expressing love in whatever way that you know how is always a good bet, especially if you're doing it from a place of empathy. So yeah, I just wanted to encourage you guys to not say these and to release yourself from the expectation of saying the perfect thing, because there isn't one. Again, I hope this was helpful. Let me know if you guys have questions, comments, concerns, or suggestions for other things that are fucked up to say to somebody who's grieving in the comments. But yeah, if you like the video, subscribe to the channel if you want to see more videos like this, and then share the video with other people, like especially if you share it on your like Facebook or in your Instagram story or whatever, like that's really helpful, and it helps spread the content so that other people can see it. We're trying to start a mental health revolution over here, y'all, and that's not going to happen with me sharing shit on my own. So share the video, help the channel grow, and help each other grow, and I'll see you later. Okay, bye.